Good morning, Santiago. Thank you very much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to talk to you.
Thanks, Apple. Simon, I just want to hear from you your experience about your personal as a teacher, your experience at the COVID-19. Have you been living like this during in Sydney as you are? And to hear also what the yogi perspective can give us in health and many aspects. And I also want to hear you're going to talk about the PTSD. So, how is it spelled? PTSD? PTSD.
PTSD, post-traumatic stress syndrome or disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder. So I couldn't completely hear that. You said you wanted to hear about my opinions of COVID-19 or how to deal with it or this sort of stuff. Could you repeat that?
Yes. I'd like to hear a little bit about your own experience, how you've been dealing with as a teacher, how it's been impacting you.
Yes. Well,
and then your thoughts about teaching online in general, and also from a cultural perspective. So if we start about your own way of dealing with the COVID-19, how it's been impacting you.
Okay. Well, I am not fussed about the virus. I teach posture, movement, breathing, and my scientific studies have been in physiology, anatomy, physiotherapy, and I have 3 degrees in human biology. But one of my first and earliest degrees was a research-based degree, a master's degree in molecular biology, where I studied recombinant DNA technology and a lot of intense molecular biology that makes me feel right now that the press is making a big hype over a virus which is probably no more threatening than the average flu virus. And there's been much worse viruses that have come along in the last 20 or 30 years, including things like SARS and MERS and things like that, which were actually probably more dangerous for people, but the fuss that they're making now was not made then. So I think that what's happening now has either been, in terms of the lockdown the world has gone into, and basically everyone's in house arrest, that this is either a big mistake by the powers that be, or else it's a planned and orchestrated event to do something else. Let's just assume they've made a mistake. But I definitely think it was a mistake, and I think there's going to be more damage coming to the world as a result of the effects of the lockdown and the shutting down of people's businesses, including, people who are teaching physical posture, movement, and breathing as we are. And also a lot of people are very alone, and many people, are potentially going to commit suicide if they're not doing it already. And so I think that the worst aspects of the viral situation are not the actual virus, but the situation we've been put into in terms of being locked down, having our businesses shut, being restricted in our travel, both in our own countries and internationally. And for me, that's affected me quite significantly, because right now I'm meant to be teaching in Paris a few days ago, and again in Italy the last few weeks. I was supposed to go to Turkey as well, and I've cancelled all these things, obviously. They got cancelled for us. In June, I'm supposed to be in China, of all places, and then in Thailand in July. All these things have been cancelled. Currently, I still have plans to come to Barcelona at the beginning of August, and hopefully that will go ahead. But I must say it's not looking fantastic at this stage right now. So for us, it's affected us significantly financially as well. The training we had in various places, people paid for in advance, and we have to refund a lot of people, and it's money that, with most businesses, you don't have lots of money in reserve, so it's meaning we're having to borrow money to pay people back for a course we couldn't run, and it's financially very, very difficult, you know. So I've been trying to do things online as well, but most of the things I do online are for free, and they're really fun to do. I really enjoy connecting with my students online, and I do have a couple of paid membership websites as well, and I have a few students in those, and I really love liaising with those people, and I invite anyone who's listening to join my membership sites. That would be fantastic. But most of what we're doing online does not really cover the costs of paying for the food and the mortgage that I still have to pay for each week for my family. So it is difficult in that regard. This COVID-19 has affected me significantly and many people around the world very adversely. But I don't think it's really any significant threat or effect coming from the actual virus itself. That, to me, is no more threatening than the average flu. And it's not exactly the same as the flu from the people I know who have had it. But nevertheless, I don't think it's the threat that the powers that be have made it seem. And so in that respect, I think they've made a big mistake, and it's not very good, not very good at all.
We try to have some effects in the long term, so both financially and emotionally and psychologically also. We're going to take part in the PTSD symposium meeting teachers. What do you have to say about this? What are the tools that you are needing?
What are the things that I'm going to say about the post-traumatic stress disorder in the symposium?
People's
Well, what are the tools that I'm going to offer people? Is that what you said?
Yeah, or young.
Yes. Okay. Well, the way I see it with post-traumatic stress disorder is, obviously, I say at the outset that every case has to be treated individually, one-on-one. And you can't give a general cure-all for everyone. You do need to see people individually. But if I had to say something general about it, then people living with post-traumatic stress and the disorder associated with it tend to be living in the past. And this constant reminder from the past of whatever traumatic event happened to them is constantly coming into their present moment, and they're projecting it into their future. And so they're becoming depressed by what they're remembering from the past in a traumatic way, and projecting negative outcomes into a potential near future, probably, which is probably unrealistic, unreasonable, and not rational, but they're doing it anyway. And this is making them very, very disturbed and dysfunctional. So the thing that I try and do when I have people like this is take them away from their past, away from potential future, and bring them into the present moment. But the present moment's only going to be enjoyable for people if you make it enjoyable for them. So what I try and do in terms of giving them tools is to give them simple posture, movement, breathing, mental control that will allow them to find a present moment state that they can engage themselves in and feel connected in the present moment within themselves and an activity they are doing at the time. And this activity that I'll try and get them to do, which varies from one person to the next, has to be something which is going to stimulate a parasympathetic nervous system response, a calming response. So what I try and get them to do is enter what is the equivalent in a way of a meditative state. And you can have many different types of meditation, but what most people think of as meditation, which is usually something like sitting in an uncomfortable position, getting bored, getting cold if the weather is cold, or becoming irritated by external stimulus if there are some, and not that exciting and not that dynamic. That's not meditation in its real form. That's just an attempt a modern version of meditation, which is not very effective for most people. To me, the meditative state would be typified by seeing, say, an Indian yogi or a Tibetan yogi or a Chinese monk or something like this, sitting very peacefully, naked in the snow. So what they're doing is something different to what the modern meditator might do, because they're able to be completely calm in a situation which potentially could seem quite stressful for someone else. For example, they're not getting cold, even though there is cold around them. And they're able to do this because they're circulating a really effective blood flow through their body without moving their body, without tensing their muscles, without breathing more than normal, and without making their heart beat faster. You see, because when people move their body in a way where they feel stretch or tension, or where they breathe more than normal, or if their heart races, what starts to happen is, yes, blood will tend to flow more, which makes them warm, but they start to enter a state of oversympathetic nervous system arousal. They enter a state of flight or fight. And this state of flight or fight has the dominant emotions of fear, anger, aggression, lack of safety, lack of trust in the situation around themselves. And they're more likely in that situation to go back to their trauma. So to take them out of their trauma, I try and move them away from the flight or fight response by keeping them in a dominantly parasympathetic state, not the fight or fight response, but I make them move good energy through their body so they start to feel connected. So I make them move their blood in a way which does not use the heart. And in that way, it makes them feel like they're in a warm bath, being massaged by someone who really loves them. Because when you start to feel connected in the body, there's more consciousness that permeates. The activities I'm trying to get them to do are conscious activities. I'm trying to get them to do conscious posture, movement, and breathing in a way where they get just enough stimulation to be engaged, to be interested in it, but not so much they get stressed by it, and not too little so they get bored by it. So the 5 features of this meditative state, I'll call it, which I'm trying to get them into, which you could also call the flow state of the elite athlete, or being in the zone, like many athletes talk about. There's 5 features of this. And the first of these is the activity I get them to do, which could be stationary, but often for most people is better if it's dynamic, has to be a sustainable activity. And I'll explain these a little bit more each in general, but the 5 things are: the activity has to be sustainable, 1. 2, it has to be engaging. 3, it has to be having a calming effect. 4, it has to feel fairly effortless, not difficult at all. And 5, it must be invigorating and really move blood. So let me clarify that. When I say 1, it must be sustainable, I give them activities that are not so difficult that they have to stop after a little while. Like exercises like push-ups would not be useful for this, because you can only do 20 or 30 or maybe 50 or 60 of your push-ups before you have to stop. But a similar muscle use would be, say, from using your tricep muscle. When you're doing a push-up, you're using your triceps, this muscle. But if you did this exercise, moving your arms up and down, you're using the same muscle, but this is something which is sustainable. This is something which is much more easy to do, and most people could do it several hundred times. So I give them activities which will use their muscles, use their body, but they're going to be activities which you can do many, many times over and not feel like you have to stop. So sustainability is important for meditative practice. The second thing is it must be engaging. Engaging means I give them enough information to make them entertained and feel like they're doing something which takes a little bit of focused thought in the present moment, but not so much information that they feel stressed. Oh, it's too much to do, I can't do all that. But not too little information that they go, this is too easy, I'm getting bored. So that's a little bit person specific. And I have to ask them to, take as much information as feels appropriate. But if it's a one-on-one situation, I can tailor it to a person. So they're trying to come to a state which has effectively coherent synchronous brainwave patterns where the default center of the brain switches off. And this default center in the brain, it's a default network, is to do with time traveling and the ego center. So I put them into a state which, interestingly enough, psychedelic drugs can also do this to people. In recent years, at places like Johns Hopkins University, they've done studies on psychedelics such as magic mushroom, psilocybin, LSD, and things like this. And they found that the people under these drugs come to a place where they stop time traveling. They no longer enter future or past. They no longer have a sense of ego where they start drifting off and thinking about what other people think about them or how their relationship is with other people. But rather they enter a place where they're totally in the present moment, connected to everything around them. This is the state that psychedelic drugs have been found to put people into. But the people who wrote the papers on these psychedelic drugs said that what's remarkable about the psychedelic drugs is it brings people to the same place that they've only ever seen in one other place. And that place is in people who do profound and proficient meditation. So the meditative state then, according to recent studies on brain science, is a place where you no longer travel into past or future, and you no longer start to see your relationship and the differences between you and other people or you and the environment, but rather you stay in the present moment feeling totally connected within yourself and to everyone and everything around you. And so that is something which, if you can get people into that state, which I'll call engagement, makes them a lot happier because they feel conscious and connected in the present moment. And so that means you give them something not too exciting and not too boring, just right. The third stage, the third place we need to look at for getting people in the meditative state, which can help post-traumatic stress disorders, is a place which is predominantly parasympathetic tone being engaged. So it's a calming response. It's a place where the heart rate stays low, breathing stays low, they feel calm, they feel relaxed. Internal organ function happens very well in this state. And also the emotional centers, the subconscious emotions, will be those of peace, love, safety, trust. And it's safety and trust and love within themselves and with the environment around them. So this is the third thing, a sense of being predominantly calming in the activity that we're trying to get them to do. The fourth thing is it must feel effortless. You know, you have to move people right away from the concept of no pain, no gain, move them right away from the ideas of survival of the fittest, right away from the monotheistic ideas of you won't get anywhere in life unless you suffer a little bit, or, you know, you won't go to heaven unless you work hard, this sort of stuff. These principles, which are predominant in our Western modern paradigm, you have to get out of people's head and go, we want you to do an activity which feels as effortless as possible. Make it easy. Make it as easy as possible. Move away from pain. Try not to feel stretch while you're doing it. Try not to feel tension while you're doing it. You can feel length and you can feel muscles working in the body, but not to feel tense or stretched. And also to have low breathing. Less breathing is better than more, and low heart rate. And if people question this, I'll say, well, fit people, healthy, fit athletes will run fast, hardly breathe at all, and their heart hardly beats. Unhealthy people walk slowly and they'll be going boom, 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 boom. I'm breathing lots. And so what we want, if you want to be like an elite athlete, is do activities where you can constantly remind yourself and be able to have a low heart rate and low breathing rate, so low minute ventilation. So these are the things which we'll call effortless. Then the fifth aspect of being in a meditative state is the one that most people miss in meditation. It must be invigorating. It must feel like it's moving blood in your body. So you must feel like the yogi on Mount Everest, where you're naked in the snow and it doesn't bother you. It's like, you know, a person who might live in a cold climate like Canada, for example, walk out in the middle of winter with a t-shirt and someone says, aren't you cold? And you go, no, I've got good circulation. Good circulation is not that where the heart beats faster than normal. Good circulation is where the blood vessels themselves will be able to move blood while the heart rate stays low. And so these 5 features of the meditative state are what I'm trying to get people into. And when I get them into it, they have a period of time while they're doing this activity where they start to be connected within themselves very consciously. And the best way to get people to feel conscious is to put them in a state where they're in love. And what I try and get them to do essentially is share good energy and loving information inside their body by making good blood flow, which is the good energy, and loving information in the form of the dominance of the parasympathetic nervous system. And this place where they're feeling in love a little bit with themselves, content with them, within themselves in the present moment, is a place where consciousness can be much more alert and awake and much more full inside the body. And then they stop thinking about the past, stop thinking about the future, and they can just be here now, happy with themselves here and now. Of course, it doesn't cure their post-traumatic stress disorder, but for the periods they're doing it and remaining conscious in that time, it gives them some relief. And then gradually, the idea is to start realizing that's something that you can do in everyday life. So I start educating them to use these tools while they walk, while they do their activities, etc. And I can explain, if you like, further some of how I specifically use these tools as well, but maybe you need to check in with me, or I check in with you.
Absolutely. That's beautiful. And it's going to be very much needed for the coming knowledge for sure.
Yes, yes.
But people are suffering the present moment now. They are suffering, people.
Yes.
So what would be those tools that you give are yogic tools? Right? Find difference between those yogic tools and non-yogic tools that may achieve the same thing. Like,
so what sort of techniques would I use to do this? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, at some point you had a video with I think it was a Tai Chi person practicing, and you were seeing the parallel of those movements with the yogic movements.
Oh, yes, possibly. Yep. So what would be the tools that I would use? Okay, so if I want to get someone to be in the present moment and feel connected, moving away from past stress or trauma, what I do is first of all give them an aim. And I say, your aim will be to move good energy and loving information inside your body and share the message of sharing good energy and loving information inside your body, which is creating good blood flow with the heart rate low and a dominance of your parasympathetic nervous system over the sympathetic nervous system or fight or fight response. And when you get this message of good energy being shared in your body and loving information being shared in your body, it becomes a message you want to share with the people around you after your practice. So you make that the first aim. And that's what I tell my students. That's our aim, to make the message of share good energy and loving information inside ourselves, to later be able to feel confident to share that with the world around us. And then so what stops good energy and loving information inside your body, you have to get rid of. And what encourages the flow of good energy and loving information inside your body, you encourage. So 3 steps. 1 step is give the aim. Let's encourage the flow. Let's make good energy and loving information flow inside our body and make that internal message to give to the world. And second step is stop blocking good energy and loving information inside the body. Third step is encourage the flow of good energy and loving information inside the body in terms of healthy blood flow with low heart rate and dominant parasympathetic nervous system. So the step to stop blocking good energy and loving information inside the body is to tell them to reduce 5 things in their body. So those 5 things, for many people, it takes a while to convince them because it sounds to many people like you're telling them not to exercise. The 5 things that block healthy circulation inside the body and will overstimulate the sympathetic nervous system are: 1 is over tension in muscles. So you get people to tense their muscles less. Tense muscles will block the flow of blood. Second thing is overstretching. In fact, any sensation of stretch in the body beyond a sense of lengthening muscles will tend to stimulate part of your stretch reflex, which is part of your fight or flight response. But also, like when you fold a garden hose in half, one side is very stretched, the other side is very squashed. And so once you start stretching the body, it starts to restrict blood flow. And also at the end of the limit of your stretch is the end of your freedom as well. And freedom is something which we all need and all thrive with. So often people, when they put themselves into stretch positions, they lose part of their freedom as well. So stretching tends to block blood flow and it tends to stimulate a flight or fight response. You know, the step just after stretch that you might feel will be the step we call pain. The step just after pain will be injury. So what I try and do with my people is get them to lengthen their muscles without feeling of stretch. The third thing that blocks good energy and also overstimulates the nervous system adversely is over-breathing. So I make them breathe less than normal, not more than normal. And the best way of doing this is actually to make them move and exercise and do things, but remind them to breathe naturally. Now, a more experienced person, you can actually tell them to breathe consciously less than normal, which in Indian yoga we might call pranayama. But it's way too hard for most people. You know, for me, if I do a long, deep breath in, I'll inhale for 2 minutes, exhale for 2 minutes. But when you say to someone else, make a deep, long breath in, they'll go, like, and it's 3 seconds into the chest, 3 seconds out, which causes overtension and overstimulation of the sympathetic nervous system and reduced blood flow to the brain, also reduced entry of the oxygen from the lungs to your blood, and also reduced entry of the oxygen from your cells to from your blood cells to your body cells. So over-breathing will blow off your carbon dioxide, and carbon dioxide is such a crucial molecule inside our body that people think, you know, is actually bad for you, but actually it's very, very good for you. So by getting them to breathe less, they're less likely to block good energy and loving information inside the body. And each of these I can discuss more at length if you wish, but I'm trying to move through them fairly simply. The next thing that blocks good energy and loving information inside the body is overthinking. So what you want, again, is to give them an activity which can become meditative. So they're doing the activity, and it might be even, you know, one big activity with many little things. Like, for example, some of the things that I teach might be to move the fingers like this. And as you're moving the fingers, they're going in a little pattern. That's something which is fairly easy for a person to do. Most people can do that. And I might teach them another activity like rotating the wrists. And I might teach them another activity like, for example, lifting the elbows up and down. And as the elbows go up, my palm is up. Elbows go down, my palm is down. So I can do that with the elbow. I can do this with the wrists, and I can do this with the fingers. And individually, that's all doable. Can they do two things at once? Can they move fingers? So fingers, for example, plus the wrists. Can they do fingers plus the wrists plus the elbow? And then they're doing 3 things at once. But I might also tell them, now do your shoulder or your upper arm. And then it becomes 4 things at once. Then I say, now roll the shoulder blades. It becomes 5 things at once. And at some point, someone's going to go, no, it's too many things. So you have to make them do enough things that they get engaged, but not too many, that it becomes too challenging, that they become overstressed. And so too much thinking will become stress, but just enough thinking becomes focused dharana, concentration, which is eventually leading to a meditative state. It's like learning how to play an instrument, and then other people learning instruments, and then eventually playing many instruments at once, like you're playing part of a concert, part of an orchestra within your body. And so that depends on the level of the practitioner, how much you give. But you don't want them to overthink, but you want them to be engaged. So the 5th thing that blocks the flow of energy and loving information inside the body is too much food. So a lot of people block themselves energetically, mentally, emotionally by just eating too much. And if I just simply tell people to, and if I eventually get people to tense less, stretch less, breathe less, think less, they often start eating less as well. And that's a good thing to do. So these are the 5 things that block energy. That you can do to reduce the blockage of energy and loving information inside the body. Tense less, stretch less, breathe less, think less, eat less. But if you just say that to someone, they go, but we've got to get flexible, we've got to get strong, we need to get the blood to flow, we need to think, obviously, and we need to eat. Now, so what you have to remind people of, and for many people it's a revelation, it is, with the right technique, very possible to increase flexibility without the feeling of stretch, to increase strength without having to feel tense, to improve blood flow without needing to increase heart rate, to improve energy levels without having to breathe so much, and to improve the intelligence of your body without having to think so much. So this is something which you have to remind people and actually educate people that the possibility exists, but these things are possible. And so we've got first 2 steps. So we understood then the purpose of the practice, to move good energy, loving information through the body, to make it a signal inside yourself you can later share with others in the world. Then the second step will be to move. I lost the video for a second for some reason, so I'm just going to, I think someone tried to ring me. I don't know. Give me 10 seconds just to check something, because I thought I said do not disturb, and yet someone tried to ring me. I don't understand that. It's okay. So let me just, I think it's okay now. Can you see me again? Let me just go back to that.
Yeah.
I'll just go back to what I was saying. So we've got the 2 steps first. We need the 3rd step. First step is to give people a purpose, that they need to circulate good energy and loving information within themselves. Second step is to stop blocking the flow of good energy and loving information inside themselves. The 3rd step is to make the good energy and information move and to encourage that. And for that, there's, again, 4 steps that you have to do. And in fact, if I really want to encourage blood flow in the body, in my own practice, I know there are 12 different ways I can move blood through the body, but they become too technical. I can talk about a centripetal pump, a respiratory pump, a gravitational pump, a musculoskeletal pump, a co-activation pump, a external pressure pump, an external temperature pump, an external carbon dioxide pump, a thought pump, and stuff like this. But it's too complex. So I found if I reduce that and make it really simple, and I tell my students or my clients 4 things. 1, move actively as the first part of your movement, and I'll explain after. Second is move from your core, don't lock your core. Third is really encourage natural breathing as your base breath. And 4th, move fluidly, not linearly. So I can explain these things briefly. The first one, move actively, means that if I'm trying to move my arm up and down, I will move it up using my own muscles, bring it down using my own muscles, as opposed to I won't let my arm just fall down. Right. I won't throw my arm up. I will control the lowering with my muscles and lift with my own muscles. And I won't use my hand to pull the arm up. So I'm not going to use external forces to move my body. I will use my own muscles. This is what I mean by move actively. Now, once a person is fully educated in moving actively, you can help them by get them to use these other forces. But initially, the first part of your movement, for the person learning all this, it's better if you move actively. Second thing is don't lock your core. Move from the core. So if you see me from this position here, for example, you can see my core is between the navel and the pubic bone at the front. And I'll take my shirt off so you can see a bit better. And from behind, my core is between the top of the hips, which is around L4, L5, and the tailbone, it's right in the middle around L5, S1. So inside there is my core. The core in China is called the dantian. The core in India is called the khanda. In other cultures like Japan, it's called the hara, or the center of the hara, called the tanden, and then in Korea, they call damdon, I think. In indigenous cultures in Australia, they call it the Nadu Kuru. All traditional cultures know that all movement should start from the core. So say, for example, I want to move my hand from one side of the body to the other side of the body. If I keep moving it, the movement of my hand is going to move my core. So if you see, my navel will start to move. My navel is just the top of the core. It's above the core. So I move my hand first. Eventually, the hand movement will start to move the core as well. So when I want to move from the core, what I have to say is, when my hand moves, it will end up moving my core. To make the practice more efficient, more natural, I should move from my core first. So then what I'll do instead is, before my hand moves, I'm going to move my core. You'll see my navel move to one side first. Then my arm follows it. Okay. Similarly, when I lift my chin up, if I lift my chin up, and anyone who's doing this can try it themselves, if you lift the chin up high enough, it will make the core move forward and up as well. If you're relaxed and you lift your chin up, your navel, or just below the navel, will move forward and up. So what it says is that if you want to make the movement even more natural, more connected, then you should move your core or your navel forward and up before your chin moves. So we can try that. So I'm going to move, before my chin lifts, I move my belly forward and up, and then my throat forward and chin up. And anyone who wishes to try can do this. Try it in 3 ways. So you go expand the belly and move throat forward, chin up, and then bring the head down. Try not doing it. Try pull in your abdomen, which goes against nature. Then try and lift the chin up. And you probably feel it doesn't feel as comfortable on the neck. So again, do the one that feels better. Expand the abdomen, then move your throat forward, chin up, and you'll find the neck works a lot better. I can give another useful example, I believe, and that is, if you wish to try it, anyone can try this, lean on one leg, come to the toe tip of the other leg, and then lift your knee up. And then when you lift your knee up and bring it up to the chest, what happens is your core starts to bend forward, your trunk starts to bend forward. So when your trunk starts to bend forward, it's saying that should have happened before the movement. So instead of lifting up the leg normally, what we can do is, before lifting the leg up, make the spine bend forward first. Your core has bent forward. Then lift up the knee and see if it feels easier. And for most people, it does feel easier. And we can compare. If you lift up your chest, and open the front of the body, almost bending backwards, then try and lift up the knee, it feels a lot harder. Better if you make the core move first into a short forward bend, and then lift up the knee, it's easier. And I think anyone trying this usually feels it. There's another way of doing it. You can also say, bring your other leg, bring it up, and as you bring it up, it will feel one way or another. But when you lift it up, what also moves up is your pubic bone. So lifting a knee up will cause the pubic bone to lift up. So what we want is to lift the pubic bone, which is really the bottom of your core, up before you lift your knee up. So you can try that. So lift your pubic bone first, then lift the knee up. And then probably notice it's a lot easier. And just to really make sure it works, try to do the opposite. Come to the toe tip, push your pubic bone down, then try and lift the knee up, and you'll feel it goes against nature. It doesn't feel right. So better is to move from the core, come to the toe tip, lift the pubic bone, and then the knee lifts up very, very easily. So this is what I mean by move from the core. Move actively, first thing. Move from the core, second thing. Third thing is breathe naturally. And breathe naturally is something that will allow the core to move freely, because in fact, breathing naturally means breathing from the core. So a natural breath has 4 or 5 main features. One is that the inhalation is low. So if I encourage an enhanced natural in-breath, you'll see my lower abdomen will expand. The natural in-breath goes down here. A natural in-breath doesn't usually go into the chest. So with natural breathing, first thing is inhalation is low. You'll feel it in your lower abdomen, or the lower back, or the pelvic floor. Second thing is exhalation is passive, meaning that when you exhale, you don't push the air out with noise and tension. You won't feel your abdomen hardening when you exhale. Rather, the air just goes out like we release a rubber band. And so when the exhale is passive, it's also what you do when you're asleep. I mean, remember, sleep is your most regenerative cycle. So this is something that will really make a difference. If you do it during your exercise, it helps make it a regenerative activity and keeps you in that parasympathetic dominant state. And the next thing about natural breathing is there's not much of it. It's like when you're asleep, you're not breathing much. And the deeper, the more restful the sleep, the quieter the breath and the less the breath is. And by having less breath, this is what encourages blood flow to the brain, also oxygen transport from the lungs to the blood and from the blood into the cells. And when oxygen enters your cells, you get up to 19 times as much energy being produced for every sugar molecule that you metabolize or burn. And the other thing about breathing less, which is going to have the effect of building up carbon dioxide inside the body and carbonic acid, is this acidity that results from breathing less will calm the nervous system. So it's very, very important to breathe naturally, because it's the best way that most people will start to breathe less than they would otherwise do if they consciously thought of breathing more. The other thing about natural breathing is that you can forget about it. You can get on with focusing on the exercise that you're doing, looking after your joints and doing something effectively without having to think of breathing. Breathing happens by itself. Take advantage of it. Last thing about natural breathing is that it's through the nose. And by breathing through the nose, you do a couple of good things. One is that nose breathing, three good things at least. One is it slows the breath down, which makes you breathe less, because it's much easier to suck more air in through the mouth. But if you suck the same force through the nose, the air goes in slower, so it helps you breathe less. The second thing is that breathing through the nose warms the breath up, and the warmer breath will take less energy to heat up than cold breath. And the third thing is breathing through the nose stimulates the production of nitric oxide. And nitric oxide is a neurotransmitter which has a very powerful circulatory enhancing effect. It will make the blood flow a lot better. It helps in the flow of good energy and loving information inside the body. So in fact, they won a Nobel Prize for the discovery of nitric oxide in the 1990s, I believe. And Pfizer, this multinational company, Pfizer, made billions of dollars because they made a drug we know as Viagra, which is what actually stimulates the production of nitric oxide inside the body to get blood flow to certain places in the body. So it's a very, very useful molecule, but it happens most when you breathe through the nose, and that's why we should be breathing naturally through the nose. Then the fourth thing that we need to do to encourage the flow of good energy and loving information through the body, which technically is moving good blood flow, enhancing circulation without the heart racing, and stimulating a dominance of the parasympathetic nervous system of the sympathetic nervous system, is movements should be fluid. And when I say movement should be fluid, is consider that movement can be linear or fluid. Linear movement is, say, going forward and back with my hand. A linear movement is also going up and down with my hand. And whenever you go up and down or back and forth, you have to stop and start. You have to decelerate, accelerate, stop and start. And if you're doing it with your head, you'd feel quite jarred doing that. So what you want is to avoid movements which go back and forth, and you make instead circular movements. So instead of going to 4 points, left and right, top and bottom, you go in a circle. And when you're going in a circle, you come to the same places, but you're doing it fluidly. And when you're moving fluidly, you can move much faster without jarring. It takes a lot less energy. The same as if you're driving a car in a circle, you don't have to use your accelerator much, you don't have to use the brake much, and it actually feels like it builds energy. So when you're on a merry-go-round, or when the children are on a merry-go-round, they feel the centripetal forces of the energy moving in your body. So joints naturally move in a circular way. So if you can make all your joints move smoothly in these ovals or circles or even figure eights in your body, which is what I'll encourage my clients and students to do in the practice. It builds energy rather than wasting energy. So these 4 ways of encouraging the flow of good energy inside the body in that case are: 1, move actively, initially at least; 2, move from the core rather than locking the core; 3, breathe naturally, at least as your base, and that means breathe from the core; and 4, move fluidly in smooth patterns in 3-dimensional space with all parts of your body. And when you do this, then you really encourage this feeling of good energy and loving information inside the body, so much so that it feels like you're in a warm bath being massaged by someone who really loves you. And it almost feels like you can feel the energy coming out of your hands. And many people experience this. It's almost like a magnet comes between your hands, or you can pass your hand over your arm and it feels like there's a thick aura around it. And in fact, when I practice like this outside in this garden, as the sun comes down, the mosquitoes come. But when the mosquitoes come when I'm practicing, they come bzz, bzz, and they don't touch me when I'm feeling this. There's a palpable energy that manifests around you like a thick aura. And this is what we want when we get good energy and loving information around the body, like a force field around the body. And it makes you feel very safe and nourished and loved. And I think if you do this, anyone will start to feel health, happiness, and longevity coming into them. And they'll move away from the stresses of past traumas or the depression of the past, move away from the potential anxiety or potential stress that comes into projected negative futures. And they start living much more in the present moment and being conscious in the present moment. And when you're conscious in the present moment, you tend to be much more easily able to do this, and you result in a state which is more loving. You become passionate about what you're doing.
Yeah.
Conscious states are loving states.
Very much needed in these times, and it goes a little bit counter to the current dilemma that we have in the society in general. How to reach people in that sense, because the fact that we arrive at these points as a society in general, Western society that we're talking about, those all ideas go totally counter to the way we live. So how to reach people, how to get people to live, that's a cold matter, because
yes,
we're talking about the media's been blowing up this, and maybe making politicians take some decisions. It's going to take a long time to get again people to reach a state of calmness.
Yes. Yeah, the biggest message that I'd have to people watching this is don't be fearful. Don't be fearful. Like this, if you're not sick and you're happy in your house and you're doing stuff in your house, be happy doing that. The virus is nothing to be scared of. If someone is sick around you, look after them gently, but also look after yourself. But to be scared of the virus actually makes you more sick. Fear is the biggest friend of the virus, and fear is the biggest enemy of the immune system. So if you want a healthy immune system to fight sickness, don't be scared. Be feeling safe, feeling love, and you are less likely to get sick because your immune system can deal with things much better. But as you say, the media is making people more and more scared all the time. And, you know, maybe one of the best things many people can do is just turn off the news. Don't listen to the media, because that's one of the worst things you can do for your health.
So let's see what the future will hold both in being again lives. Let's hope that I'm going to see in Barcelona in August. Let's pray for that.
I'm hoping to see you in Barcelona in August. Yes, indeed.
Yes. I mean, I'm delighted and I'm really excited. Thank you very much. I mean, this goes really counter to many of the way practicing in those kind of practices that are going to maybe help us in that regard, but still they may go counter to your ideas. Let's say
yes.
We work a lot with Anabanda. you would say that that would be quite the opposite also if you are pressing on the lower abdomen.
Yeah, this is confusing for many people because many people in the world of modern yoga have a misunderstanding of what Uddiyana Bandha, Mula Bandha is. And similarly, in the world of modern sports, people have misunderstood the concept of draw the navel to the spine. And if I can quickly show this, perhaps, what it is. So if I think you can see me from here. There are 4 different ways to pull the navel toward the spine. So when we do this, it can have a good effect or a bad effect. So when I read on the internet what is Uddiyana Bandha, some people will say it's pulling your navel in towards your spine or something like that. Sometimes Mula Bandha is talked about that way, or even talked about as tightening your pelvic floor. But in fact, if I'm pulling my navel to my spine, I can do it in 4 ways. This is my relaxed abdomen. And I can pull it to my spine. I'll hold my finger here. You can see if I pull it to my spine using exhalation muscles, using the muscles of forced abdominal exhalation, I will do this. You see my abdomen moves inwards away from my finger.
Yeah.
And that's using exhalation muscles. I can also bring my navel to my spine using postural muscles. So I'll keep my finger where it is, and I'll bring my navel to my spine using postural muscles, such as a combination of my rectus abdominis and my oblique muscles. I'll do that. Now, it looks like I've drawn my navel to my spine away from my fingers, but it's a very different feeling, and I'll show you in a second why. Then the third way of doing it is by using the muscle known as transverse abdominis, and I can do this, and I pull in using transverse abdominis. Again, it looks similar. Then the fourth way is using my chest. So I'll use my chest, and I'm going to expand my chest, but look what happens is my abdomen draws inwards. So these 4 distinct ways of moving the abdomen inwards toward the spine, or moving your navel toward the spine, have 4 different effects. Even the feeling is different. So the first one, using the exhalation muscles called the external and internal oblique muscles, when I do this, that will make my abdomen go in, but it makes it go in and hard and unable to breathe naturally. So if I put my fingers into my abdomen like this, and anyone doing this can try this as well. You put your fingers into the soft abdomen, make sure it's soft, release it. Now exhale fully and pull the navel to the spine. And then feel it's hard, keep it hard, try and breathe into your abdomen. It's difficult. You start breathing in the chest. And when you feel your abdomen soft first, then exhale, pull the navel to the spine. The abdomen appears to pull in and allow your finger to get closer toward the spine. So this is the first way of pulling the navel to the spine. Many people will do this when you ask them to engage Uddiyana Bandha or draw the navel to the spine, and it's not helpful. It causes stress, it locks the spine, and causes discomfort and all sorts of other problems. The second way of drawing the navel to the spine is using postural muscles. So postural muscles might be the ones like, for example, if I lean back like this, automatically my rectus abdominis becomes engaged. And anyone can try this. So what you can do is if you put your fingers into your soft abdomen, then you lean back, you'll notice your fingers actually get pushed out by the abdomen. So if you put your fingers in, lean back, the rectus abdominis engagement will cause the abdomen to push out. But if you're really relaxed, you'll notice in this position, the front stays firm, but the sides are actually very relaxed. You see, my sides are very relaxed. And in this position, my front being firm, I'm still able to breathe in my abdomen. It does not inhibit my diaphragm. It does not inhibit my ability to feel calm or to move my spine. And that's a much more effective way of drawing the navel to the spine. It's not actually Uddiyana Bandha. In this case, it's a form of Mula Bandha, but people's understanding of that is very, very mixed. So the other way of drawing the navel to the spine uses transverse abdominis. And so if I do this, that's using transverse abdominis. But the thing is, my abdomen is soft when I'm doing this. And so I can engage transverse abdominis, which is a transverse muscle going like a belt, and I can go lower transverse in or upper transverse, or lower then upper, or upper then lower. And I can roll my abdomen like this, but when I'm doing it, when I bring my lower in, my upper is still soft. When I bring my upper in, my lower is still soft. When I bring lower in, my upper and my lower is soft. when I bring upper in, my upper and my lower soft. So this movement like this, which is really engaging the lower abdomen, which is what people talk about but never do, that's a very soft activity, and that doesn't cause stress at all. But in my observations as a physiotherapist and as a yoga teacher, you're lucky to have 1 in 20 people who can actually do that. So it's not something that people can generally do, but if you can, I'll teach it to people. But in the beginning, it's better just to say, relax your abdomen and avoid tightening with the exhalation muscles. The fourth way people draw the navel to the spine is by expanding the chest. So if I relax here, you see my abdomen sticks out. As soon as I expand my chest, abdomen goes in, but it's soft. So I can expand my chest in a very relaxed way. With my abdomen very soft, I can expand my chest by breathing into it, but my abdomen is relaxed. But for most people, they cannot expand the chest unless they first inhibit their diaphragm and tighten their abdomen in a way which makes them unable to breathe diaphragmatically. And people can try this if they want. Just try for a second a couple of things. First of all, inhale to the abdomen. Notice it feels relaxing if the chest doesn't move and the abdomen opens. Then exhale fully and tighten the abdomen. Now keep it tight. Now try and inhale to the abdomen and notice it feels restricted and you start to want to breathe in the chest. Then release it. Now show me a chest breath, breathe into the chest. And everyone can do that much, but then release it. Now, if I ask most people to relax the abdomen fully and try and breathe into the chest, most people can't do it. But if I say to people, all right, first tighten your abdomen, then breathe into the chest, then everyone can breathe in the chest. Now, 9 out of 10 people will get that result. And what it says really is that most people, 9 out of 10, are only breathing in the chest by doing the very thing that we show also makes you feel stressed, which is tightening the abdomen in a way where you're using your exhalation muscles. The pelvic floor also makes this worse if you tighten the pelvic floor, especially the anus. So you're right that many people will hear what I'm saying and get completely misunderstanding because they think I'm saying don't lock your core. I'm not saying don't lock the core. I'm not saying don't. So they might think that I'm saying never tighten your abdominal muscles. My abdominal muscles are very firm. I can make them as firm as I like, but I don't lock my core. And in that way, then I'm using muscles of the abdomen, of my trunk, which will give me strength, but not let me feel tense. And that's something which takes a little bit of explaining to people because initially it's their paradigm in their head that blocks them most. They think that they should be tense. They think they should be hard. Whereas actually softness usually gives a lot more energy. And sometimes there is a need to be hard, but what type of hard are you going to get? So the biggest change people have to make is in their minds, the idea that actually suffering is an important part of their practice, that, get rid of the idea of no pain, no gain, get rid of this mythology of survival of the fittest, which was pushed on us by the politics around Charles Darwin, which was, a means to justify the invasion of many traditional cultures by the powers that be at the time, But in fact, nature works by cooperation, mostly, not by survival of the fittest. So if we observe real nature and realize that survival of the fittest is not the way it works, it would make a big difference.
Yeah. We have to wrap it up here. I would have loved to talk about the basal and engaging the sphincter, but we won't have time here. And I would love to see just a workshop with you, just this breathing technique, just because that is like the engaging that you were talking at the beginning. It takes time to deal with every single step to achieve the state that we're talking about. Simon, thank you very much for your wisdom, your love, and information and kindness.
Well, thank you. It is such a pleasure to talk with you. Thank you very much for inviting me. And for anyone listening, if you write to me or contact me, I can send you some links to some simple ways of practicing in this way, or maybe you can share the links for them. And I'm happy to talk again and talk further about some of the other things that you discussed and you'd like to talk about anytime. And I want to say thank you very, very much to you and for everyone listening. And yes, the big message is for all of us to share good energy and loving information inside ourselves and make that a message that we should share with the people outside ourselves. And I think if everyone did it and took the time each day to do some sort of meditative practice which makes them feel good, it's going to be much easier to feel good about everyone around you and share that message. So thank you very, very much.